This is BBC Radio 4, now Farming Today this week with Charlotte Smith.
Good morning. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning. Crisp, clear and bright here in East Sussex. I'm just outside the village of Salehurst in the beautiful High Weald. And the reason I'm here, well, I suppose it's a walk with a purpose. The hubbub you can probably just about hear behind me is a group of people and dogs getting ready for a game shoot. I have to say that it is rare on this programme that I feel underdressed. I'm wearing thermals, jeans, a very big coat. Everybody around me is in matching tweed. Beautiful, subtle hues of green and gold in front and behind me. And that's just the men. Now, walking towards me, resplendent in a three-piece tweed suit, is the part-time gamekeeper here, Mike Fellows. Mike, just explain the type of shoot that we've joined this morning.
It's a farm shoot. We have approximately 400 acres that we shoot over, perhaps a little more. We have some of the syndicate members that allow us onto their land, which borders our land. So, we use some of that on occasion. We have small days here, typically 50 bird days.
So the way this then works is that it's organised between the people, the guns, the people who come to shoot. They pay to support you, to support paying for the birds and so on. You don't generally sell a day's shooting for thousands of pounds.
No, that's quite right. The syndicates pay X amount of money per year to be a full gun or a half gun in the syndicate. That then funds the poults, myself, the food and everything connected with running the shoot.
Generally speaking though, shooting is something for the wealthy, isn't it?
Well, I think it used to be. I think it's more affordable now, and I think it's, because of small farm shoots, we don't charge anywhere near what commercial shoots would charge, but then they have to charge the money that they do to survive.
How many people then are involved in making this day happen?
We've got a team of 10 beaters. I have 2 pickers up. I have 1 guy driving the game cart and myself, and we've got a syndicate of 10 guns. Yeah, go ahead.
So Mike's just on the radio trying to sort out his 10 beaters, 2 picker-uppers, 1 game cart driver.
Again,
so what's the point of it then today?
Well, you're having a fantastic time in the English countryside. It's great. Country sports, I think, really, really underrated. You're outside, not sat in front of an Xbox.
I think your dog is a little bit fed up of standing here.
He wants to go and work.
Right, let's get out of the way and get on. We'll catch up with Mike again a little bit later on. Now, all week on Farming Today, we've been looking at rural sports. According to the Country Land and Business Association, more than 4 million people here in the UK take part in country pursuits, bringing £1 billion into the rural economy. The CLA's Charles Trotman told me traditional sports are still as popular as ever.
Shooting, for example, generates over £1.5 billion a year to the rural economy. We know that angling activities generate, again, over £1 billion to the rural economy. So we are talking big figures here.
How do they stack up to be worth so much?
Well, you've got to look at how many people are actually employed. We know that fishing is one of the most popular sports in the country. Shooting alone has over 70,000 people employed in the sector. So just by looking at the number of people who are actually involved, you can see how much money will be generated and how that feeds into the rural economy.
So we're talking what, gamekeepers, gillies?
You're talking everybody who's involved, but not just those directly involved. You've also got to look at those indirectly involved, the conservationists, the tourism operators, because if you've got a shoot going on, for example, people are going to follow the shoot. They're going to need somewhere to stay. So usually, they're going to stay overnight. That generates an income for the B&B holder, for example. So both the direct and indirect economic impacts or economic benefits will, of course, feed into the general rural economy.
What about the more modern sports, if you like, that happen in the countryside? Things like quad bikes or outward bound?
Obviously things like that, they're becoming more popular. Farmers, for example, with land will be able to diversify into those interests. BMX is obviously a very good example of a diversified interest. But again, if you look at the tourism sector, for example, That generates over £17 billion just for England itself, and in terms of rural tourism. So again, we're talking very big figures here, and they tend to be actually bigger than agriculture itself.
We are talking, though, really here, tweed and tradition. Are we selling an outdated version of the British countryside to ourselves?
No, I totally disagree with that. I know a lot of people who you'd never associate with the countryside at all, and that's the image that we have to get across. It isn't just the Tweed Brigade, so to speak, who are involved in shooting. It's the general populace are now becoming more involved in shooting and obviously fishing as well, and other country sports, than they've ever been before.
Charles Trotman there, senior economist at the CLA.
As regards what we're shooting today, basically pheasants, as you know.
Well, that's our host this morning, Andrew Hode. He owns and runs the farm, and as you can tell, he's also in charge of organising the guns.
Jolly good. We'll get off.
Andrew, you've managed to get your guns all in a row, on their pegs, all facing in the right direction. Why have shooting here on the farm?
My family have always shot, for want of a better term. It's something that we farmers have always done. It's something we do. It's quite a social thing, really. We shoot during the winter when it's a bit less busy on the farm. In the past, a lot of it was actually necessary as vermin control. Rabbiting took up quite a lot of time in the days before myxomatosis, and it's carried on from that.
How does it work then with the rest of your farm? What else do you do on this land?
We're a mixed farm. We have an arable enterprise, we have beef, sheep, and we also grow hops. The farming, I mean, is obviously the important thing. That's the main enterprise we have here. We're not a commercial shoot. We shoot because we enjoy it. My sons are involved in it. The money side of it is not important, as long as the bills get paid, and that's the important thing for us.
Fundamentally, they all put in to pay for the gamekeeper, the birds going down, the lunches, I assume, which is a big part of a shooting day.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And does it just tick over, or does it make you a profit?
I suppose, in all honesty, it probably costs us a bit, certainly in time. I mean, I put a lot of time in, but I don't mind, I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing other people enjoy themselves, and that's one of the buzzes I get from it.
Well, we're just waiting for the beaters to walk towards us through. We're on a slope here in the field, and if you look up towards the top of the slope, there's a small wooded area, and that, I imagine, is where the birds are going to be beaten through.
That's right, yes.
I have limited experience of a beater, but it seemed largely to involve walking through gorse bushes.
We don't have a lot of gorse here, but we have brambles, and they're probably worse.
I was about to volunteer, but I shan't now. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Well, pheasant shooting's been happening here for centuries, but some farmers are taking a more modern approach to country sports, and they've diversified into the likes of geocaching and paintballing, and even quad biking, as Willie Flockton found out. Well, while churning up mud with quad bikes might do little more than create potholes through the pasture, there have been questions about the impact of shooting on local ecosystems. Jeff Knott from the RSPB told Anna Hill that while many shoots actually help to provide good habitats for wildlife, shooting game has in the past been partly responsible for a decline in some of our native raptor species.
Birds of prey do eat things, and they will, when the opportunity presents, sometimes eat game birds. And as a result of that, unfortunately, on some estates, particularly these upland grouse estates, gamekeepers do sometimes take the law into their own hands and kill the birds of prey as a result.
This has been addressed, hasn't it, in many ways. There have been prosecutions, and the numbers of poisonings of birds has gone down, hasn't it?
The important point is that it is still unacceptably common, and it is still having a conservation level effect on some of our rarest birds of prey, and that's the really important point. It is unacceptably common, and we have to do more to try and stamp it out.
Now, if we look at pheasant shooting, are there concerns about the numbers of pheasants that are raised for shoots at all?
Well, there's certainly concerns, but there hasn't been a huge amount of work to look at the potential impacts of this. And we know that around 50 million non-native game birds are released into the UK every year, and that is a huge injection of biomass. That density of birds could lead to disease problems. There could be competition for food sources with native wildlife. What we really need is more research to better understand what the potential problems are, and importantly, how we can overcome them.
You're not anti-game shooting, are you?
No, not at all. The RSPB is completely neutral on legitimate field sports. That's written into our Royal Charter. What we want to do is identify and tackle those negative problems, things like bird of prey persecution. But on the flip side, as with any land management practice, we want to identify and help to celebrate the positive things that some game shoots are doing, and ultimately we want more game shoots to be doing more positive things for wildlife. There's some fantastic examples of shoots that are doing good work for conservation, for farmland birds and for woodland birds. In woodlands it can be getting woods back into management, skylighting, opening them up, getting more light in. That's beneficial for the pheasants and for the shooting estates, but also for a range of woodland wildlife. In farmland, a lot of the agri-environment measures that are positive for farmland birds are also positive for things like grey partridge and low-intensity pheasant shoots in that way.
Jeff Knott there, the RSPB's Senior Policy Officer with Anna. You're listening to Farming Today this week. We're on a farm shoot this morning in East Sussex. The reason I'm speaking a little bit quietly is that I'm at the bottom of a hill behind a row of 9 guns, all waiting patiently for the pheasants to be flushed towards them from a small woodland at the top of the hill here. Standing next to me is Dan Reynolds, who is the South East Director for the British Association for Shooting and Conservation. Dan, we've just heard from the RSPB. They're neither for or against shooting, but it does seem sort of counterintuitive, doesn't it, to talk about shooting a bird being good for its conservation?
Yeah, that's sort of a common theme and a common question that we get asked, but certainly with shooting, primarily we're custodians of the countryside. We're looking after the game birds. The shooting and putting the pheasants into the food chain is the end product. In doing that, we have to rear the pheasants, we have to make sure they're safe, and we have to make sure that they're held in the cover where we want to drive them and shoot them from. Doing that, ensuring you've got good ground cover in the woodland, not only good for your game species, but good for ground nesting birds. It's good for small mammal species. There's a succession of food there. There's warm habitat which they can sort of feed and nest and live in. The other thing that shoots commonly do is put down things which we call cover crops. They're nectar rich in the summer, so very good for insects. They're very obviously then very good for insect feeding bird life, and also a lot of those cover crops lasting through into the winter. Good, they're warm for pheasants, they're warm for your game birds, but they're also providing seed. They're providing food for overwintering birds and habitat for them to be in. So there's a huge amount that shoots do. Yes, it benefits the shoot and the shooting, but it also benefits a wide range of species outside of that.
Oh, so here comes a bird out of the thicket. You can just hear the beaters, and they're flushing these pheasant towards us, and one or two of the guns are having a go. So would the argument be then that here, as we look up the hill, that little bit of woodland might not exist if there weren't a shoot here on the farm, because it's useful?
Absolutely. So shooting influences the management of about 2/3 of our rural landmass. So there's a huge amount of conservation work that is done, and these habitats might not exist if shooting wasn't there. Not only that, managing the habitat, shooters are putting in the equivalent of about 12,000 full-time jobs worth of work every year, ensuring that conservation happens, and out of their own pocket they're spending about 250 million on conservation, which is about 5 times the income of someone like the RSPB.
I should point out that our host this morning has said that although it is a beautiful day to be out in the countryside, it's not a great day for a shoot because we've got this very bright sunshine, and birds don't like that any more than we do, and it's bright into their eyes.
No, they don't. No, they don't like flying into the sunlight, and also we haven't got a great deal of breeze today, so the birds are getting up there. They are flying over, perhaps not as well as they might do on a day with slightly different conditions.
Here we go now. 4 birds clear out. I think the pheasants won that round. 3 or 4 flew straight over. You're out shooting a lot. Do you ever see anything other than pheasant and partridge?
Yeah, a huge amount of wildlife. I was actually out yesterday on an estate, and there were roe deer, there were woodcock, there was snipe, there were songbirds flitting around the trees. Obviously it's winter, so a lot of our small mammals are not going to be in sight, but there'll be a huge amount of sign, whether it be sort of leftover nutcases, those sorts of things. So there is an abundance of wildlife on shoots.
You've got to be quite a good shot. It looks deceptively easy, but I've shot clay pigeons, which I found incredibly difficult. You've got to be good to do this and do it properly, haven't you?
Absolutely, and doing it properly is the key thing here. We've got to make sure that people who are shooting game, that they're proficient and they can do it. We're trying to make sure that when you are shooting these birds, that they are killed cleanly, and doing that you've obviously got to be a good shot, and you've got to be well practiced.
Presumably, though, not all people who shoot are good at it. There must be occasions when birds are not shot cleanly.
There is inevitably, you sometimes get birds that aren't hit cleanly, and obviously, as you can see here, we've got a number of people stood around with gun dogs, their Labradors and their Spaniels, and they're there to go and pick up any birds that haven't been killed instantly, bring them back to the waiting picker up, who will dispatch the bird humanely.
Well, we've walked back up the hill at the end of that drive. I'm with some of the guns. Why come shooting? What's the attraction of this?
For me, being in the local community, walking 30 yards from my front door, seeing the changing countryside as the year progresses, I do enjoy the sport.
And how are you getting on?
Not too badly, 1 for 3, which is probably not the greatest returns. But
so you actually keep a sort of mental tally then?
sometimes, but I like to keep it to myself. Yeah.
Can I ask you as well why you come?
Just have a nice relaxing day off work.
It is a bit of a busman's holiday for you though, isn't it? Because you work in farming.
Yes, I'm a farms manager and my general day is running the farm, so I don't get a chance to enjoy the outdoor living and the views and the peace.
Well, just parked at the top of the hill here is the card, the game card, which now has a few pheasants hanging from it, which have been retrieved by the pickers up over here. Good morning.
Hi there.
How are you getting on today?
Not too bad, yeah. Good.
Have you had a lot to pick up, or
not yet,
are they rubbish?
No,
these
they're
guns?
not too bad. I can't say too much, can I?
You're being very diplomatic.
Yes, superb shot.
So, for people who don't know, what is your role here today?
Well, to pick any injured birds that come down, and otherwise you lose them and they suffer. So you pick them up as quick as you can and dispatch them, really. Yeah.
And how often are you here doing that?
I do. Oh well, I pick up sort of 3 days a week.
For various
shoots, yeah, and I shoot a bit as well. So yeah, I don't do a lot else in the winter.
Why?
I just love it, really. To be honest.
Really?
Shooting and.
I mean, I can see it on a day like today.
Well, it's the working the dog and stuff.
Even when the weather is not quite as beautiful as it has been this morning.
Yeah. I don't know what it is really. It's being out in the countryside and
Something you love, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're picking up as well today.
I am, yes.
So is picking up a better job than beating then?
If you've got a good enough dog, yes. It can be frustrating, but it's lovely to see a good dog work, especially to pick something that's been injured that might get away, and it's very rewarding.
You've got your dog here at your feet.
That's right. She's 6 years old. She is what we'd call a rough shooting dog, but she's okay for picking up. She's steady, which is what you want, not like a spaniel.
I can hear spaniel owners all over the country shouting at their radios now. Well, the game cart's just moving off. I'm with Mike Fellows, part-time gamekeeper here. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going extremely well. We just had one drive. We had 48 shots or thereabouts of that. They killed 2 woodcock and about 10 pheasants. So,
and is there a bit of competition, if you like, with them, with the other people who shoot here, particularly the younger ones, as to who gets what?
Unfortunately not. It's so laid back here that and they're pretty much on a par for the amount of shots that they have and the total bag at the end of each day. So there's not much between them really.
Generally, we've got the older end of shooting here. Are there younger people who are getting interested in doing this sort of country sport?
There are. Generally, the way in for people, unless you are sort of fairly well heeled, is to sort of start, beating and then perhaps picking up, and then you buy your first gun and you perhaps do a bit of rough shooting and work your way in that way. That's generally the way for that most young people will come in, unless of course you can sort of afford to buy a day shooting. And the other way is a lot of people do clay shooting, which is much more affordable, and then progress on to driven game shooting.
Lovely way to spend a morning.
It's fantastic.
Less relaxing for you, I'm guessing.
Yeah. My blood pressure usually runs at around about 2,000 psi on a shoot day.
We'll leave you to it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. And that's it from us here in East Sussex.